Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about The Sandman, Season 1, Episode 6. A great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. I think this episode was interesting, and the fact is that, it's very existential, but also the interesting juxtaposition from, the first half of the episode about death, and then the second half of the episode is kind of about immortality, so I thought that was kind of an interesting parallel, and just kind of where Dream kind of sits in the grand scheme of things. But the more and more the show goes by, the more I'm like, yeah, it definitely has that Lucifer vibe, whereas yes, there's an overarching plot, but Lucifer was very much designed to be very episodical, and that's what I was saying, that I was kind of under the impression all these episodes, yes, there's connective tissue, but the only retrospective connective tissue typically across every storyline is Dream. Dream's the main character, and we see him kind of almost going through this episodical adventure and these existential questions and meeting of all these different people, and I just think that's such an interesting thing, especially because very much like the show Lucifer, it's all about existential stuff this episode, because Dream is kind of lost. He, meets his sister, big sister, Death, and that was a question I had previously, what's the hierarchy of the siblings? So, we know Desire's on the younger side, so it seems like I would assume, because that was something I was wondering too, considering Death is Death, and Death has had to be around a while, I'd assume Death is the oldest, so yes. So, probably Death precedes Dreams, Desires, and then maybe even Destiny. Destiny and Death might go hand in hand on which one technically came first. I'd assume Death came first, because there had to be life first, and then Death, and then everything else kind of trickle out afterwards, whether it's Dream, Desire, Despair, or Destiny. Either way, she's there to kind of smack her brother, get him back in, because he's so beaten down, because for him, when he was locked up, all he focused on was one thing: revenge. He got it, and it wasn't as satisfying as he thought. Then he had a quest. Oh, I'm gonna get all 3 of my items back, which I did, and now I don't feel anything. The quest gave, for so long he ruled his kingdom, so everything, the function that they all exist for, it's just that he just did his job, and now he found something outside of his job, and now he just feels empty. And he's actually depressed. Very much like that. Like I said, I love that existential, even celestial beings have their issues, and so Death is trying to it's right, follow me, brother, and there's this sad beauty to what she does. And when she talked about it initially, but she's before this world, she kind of loved what she did, because it's right, I'm kind of there, to see life, and then kind of see it kind of end, you're part of this beautiful cycle of life to some extent, but eventually it wears on you, because when people see you, it's people come into this world so hopeful and happy about life, but then when they meet you at the end, you're the representation of no, life is over, no, I'm fighting, I don't want it to be over, so it puts her in a very rough position that that's all your job is that, but she actually eventually comes to love and like her job, because for her, and it's just, like I said, there's this beauty to it, the beauty of this cycle that is life and death, and once again, it gets very existential. It's just that thing of death is a part of the cycle. It is a necessary part of the cycle, because with life coming to an end makes that life kind of worth meaning. But once again, it's kind of an interesting juxtaposition to a life that keeps on going, which they know, and then obviously everything will hard, but we'll get to that when we get to it. But her kind of being there for people, that old guy, and then people not knowing, it's just let me get this one more thing, please let me do this. The guy, the older man, he prayed, he's oh, my dad said you gotta pray before, so if you pray before you die, you'll be able to get to heaven. He's I don't even know if I believe in heaven. And obviously, they always cut away from it, but her wings. Because the moment the episode was the sound of her wings, I was it's got to be Death, because she's the angel of death. Which is interesting, considering that they're just canonically, taking Lucifer what it is, Lucifer being, one of God's angels, there is a literal angel of death, Azrael, so there is kind of an interesting correlation there. I don't know if they're supposed to be the same thing or not. I don't think they are, because, yeah, they're because the endless and celestials are different beings. I guess, the angels, they're kind of their own thing, but obviously the endless supersedes them in the grand scheme of just the makeup of existence, you know? At least that's how I'm justifying. Because I know, like, you know, in Lucifer, you do meet the Angel of Death, Azrael, because her blade plays a part in part of it. She's played by Charlene Yee. So, but nevertheless, putting all that aside, I love that conversation where it was like, right, she's like, she used to believe she had the hardest job, and he was like, really? Because it's like, yeah, when people go into the sunless lands, they're not too happy, but they walk into your realm night after night with no fear, you know? It's just like, yeah, but even he's like, yeah, but I'm the more terrifying person, because when people meet her, she tries to approach it with like, right, people need a friend and a somewhat kind words and a friendly face to ease their transition. She's like, it's a long flight to the sunless lands, and it's a hard journey, but not going it alone. And I love, like, it all coming, like, for her, it's this beautiful statement of our purpose is our function. Like, she's like, it took me a long time to realize it, but I need them as much as as much as they need us. Our purpose is our job. There is nothing beyond that because there is a beauty in that because he felt like she was so connected with humans that it's like, right, you're always there for all of them, which she's like, I try to be, but she's also like, I don't. I'm not there for all of them. There are exceptions like Hob and Mad Hetty, for example. So I just thought that was an interesting thing, and she kind of gave her brother insight into something that he had kind of forgotten, because she had called him out for being kind of a selfish idiot. Because also she's like, you could have called me. He's like, yeah, but I didn't think. She's like, exactly. You didn't think. Like, you didn't think I'd be worried about you, because he made it seem like, oh, none of my siblings came to my aid. It's like, yeah, but none of them knew what you were, because I guess for so long he kept isolated. He just kind of did his own thing, so it's not like your siblings knew what you were up to. And it's like, at no point, she's like, probably like, even after you got out, Lucien was like, yeah, go ask your siblings for help. And he kind of also made it seem like, right, they didn't come help me, so why would I turn it in for help? But also, like, their problems are their problems, and I shouldn't burden them with mine. But she's like, no, we're siblings. I would have had your back, but you didn't. You're so stuck in your own ways. You're so stuck in, like, your isolation. It's like, no, we're siblings. You're one of my little brothers. Like, one of my younger siblings at the very least, because we don't know whether, like, destiny or which one, destiny or despair, we don't know, like, or those brothers or those sisters. Death did talk about the fact is they did have a meeting while they were a family meeting some time ago during the time that Dream was missing. It was Death, I think. She didn't go into too many specific details, but it sounds like it was her, Desire, and Despair. Because she said, like, the twins. So I'm assuming Despair and Desire are the twins. Maybe not. It might actually be, like, because she later on references Desire being the one that was kind of happy or whatever. But, like, also that the prodigal is missing. So I'm like, oh, I'm assuming that has to deal with Destiny. I'm assuming Destiny being the prodigal that's gone. So one's missing, and the other, apparently another one of their siblings is missing too. So I was like, what's up with that? But I love the casualness. Once again, it very much reminds me Lucifer of just like, right, so let's these powerful entities having just casual problems and just going through existential crisis, and them being there for each other, and just her role in everything. Also, it's Kirby Howe Batiste, and I'm so happy that, like, her playing the role, because I had no idea, because I didn't realize that was her in, like, the date announcement or trailer, because, like, one of the scenes from this episode is in the trailer. Like I said, I don't remember if it was the date announcement or the official trailer. It might have been the official trailer, but I didn't know it was her until Comic-Con. I was like, wait, I didn't know you were in this, like, because her, and, like, it was her, the actor who plays Dream, Gwendolyn who plays Lucifer, and the actor who plays Desire. They were all there, like, on, like, because I know, like, I think IGN interviewed them, so, like, that's some of the cast, and I was like, oh man. And I know, like, IGN also interviewed some of the other people too, like Jenna Coleman and Patton Oswalt, for example, and the actor who plays the Corinthian. just to name a few I know. So it's like, yeah, but like I did not know she was in this show. Once again didn't realize that it was her in the trailer until like she was getting interviewed. I was like, oh my god, you're in the show and you're Death. Hell yeah, because she's also because obviously the things I best know her from are The Good Place. I want to say Killing Eve was my first introduction to her. Then I saw her in The Good Place, and then like obviously I watched Barry. So like those are the three shows like I know her best from. So I think it's also this beautiful element to her. Like she's almost got not the best way I could put it is like she's kind of like a flower child, like almost got this hippie vibe to her, and it feels almost poetic that Death would have that, especially because I think it's an interesting juxtaposition to some extent where it's like. Not even based on, like, do I know her personality from the comics? Just based on her character design. She's, like, very punk rock looking in the comics. So that's why I think it's kind of an interesting... Because I know they are, you know, using the source material, but also kind of bringing their own flair to the characters. It's like, right, it's a, you know, as people have said who have read the comics, this is going to be a different interpretation of that story. You're going to get different versions of characters, and like whether or not you can separate that in your head or not, that's a whole conversation, right? But it's like, yeah, at least the look, just once again, based on Death's design, she was very like punk rock, and in this, she's kind of got that with all the black, you know, it's very befitting. But also, just like her, like, she's got this, not laissez-faire, but like I said, like this flower child, kind of almost hippie-ish vibe to her. Like, no, like, take your shoes off and just, like, put your feet against the ground and just feel everything, you know? Kind of almost, like, be present, be in the moment, you know? So I thought that was a beautiful element to her episode. Once again, that there is this sadness to what she does, but there is this beauty to it as well. And then Dream going off and meeting Hob, how this all started with him not wanting... He's like, oh, death. He's like, I'm going to be the one that survives it. Like, we only accept death because just everyone goes along with it. So, to keep things interesting, Death was like, you know what? I'm going to grant his wish. And now you're deathless. You're going to live forever. And now you have Dream being like, yeah, let's meet back here like every 100 years. And it became like an anniversary. And the moment you kind of get into that, you're like... That's why he missed it. He was captured, like, by when they were supposed to meet up in 89, he was captured. So, it's like, right, so are you going to have to wait till, like, 2089 to give this another shot? But it's like, you know. But kind of getting that story of, like, him meeting, like, every 100 years, the first 100 years in, like, 1489. It's like, wait, who are you? How am I still alive? Did I make a deal with the devil? It's like, no, I'm not the devil. And then they keep going. Eventually, you see this moment I thought was interesting where it's like, oh, like, Hob is like living the good life. Everything's like going his way. Like everything's great. But when he was with Dream was more focused on William Shakespeare. It's like, oh, you want to be able to write something that can inspire dreams, bring forth the dreams of man, even way beyond your death. He had taken interest in someone else because it's like, right, your stories, I guess, kind of, you know, it's like, right, he wanted to see, like, if a human lived as long as they would. He believed, like, oh, a human living as long as us would get bored after a century. Like, living a life like this would be an issue. And yes, life was doing good for him. And he was almost kind of, like, saddened by the fact his Dream wasn't paying him any attention anymore. It's like, oh, I'm trying to regale you in all my stories, and you're not interested. Okay, you're more so interested in a writer. I was like, nah, the guy's stuff isn't even good. It's pure crap or whatever. And then, like, the next 100 years, it turns out, yeah, life was pretty shitty. It was like this 1689, and it's like, yo, like, 80 years of my life was straight garbage. He's like, I made a mistake of staying in one place too long. I got too overconfident, and they thought I was a witch, and they tried to, like, kill him. And he's like, yeah, luckily I got it there with my skin mainly intact. Because previously, he had a wife and a son. His wife ended up dying during childbirth. You're like, oh, Jesus. His son Robin died in, like, wasn't it like a bar fight or something when his son was, like, 20? It's like, yeah, that was not a good century for you. Because he'd even said, like, right, this was the first time he had a child out there in the world that, you know, that he was aware of in the past 200 years, you know? And despite all the bad shit that's kind of happened in his life, he was like, no, I'm all about, you know, there's still so much to, like, there's so much beauty in life that I want to kind of experience everything. Because he'd even said, like, right, in the past 100 years, like, how much has changed. He was like, oh, now we have these little, like, it was in 1489. He's like, oh, we have these little napkins for our noses. We have to blow stuff into our sleeves. And he's like, card games and everything. He was talking about the advancement. He was kind of focusing on kind of some superficial stuff. Then we kind of got into the 1789 where things were kind of like, ugh, when Dream was like, oh, not, oh, so you're super about the slave trade because you're like, oh, he's like, you enslaving another person. It's like, he's like, yeah, but that's just how things are done. And it's like, I would advise you not to be a part of it. He's like, didn't you always tell me to live my life and it's my choice? He's like, it is your choice. But if you're all about making your choices, how can you take that away from another human being? And that kind of made him go like, all right, I'll take your advice. And we meet Johanna Constantine. Their first encounter was kind of very aggressive to some extent, because she's like, right, because he wanted to find out more about their circumstances, because word was that the devil and a Jew met here, and it's like, I'm not a devil, I'm not Jewish, and I even love, wait, is this supposed to be me? That looks nothing like me, and that's supposed to be you. Like, come on, these caricatures of us are god awful. And she's like, right, these my men will like slit your throats. And so, I mean, to be fair, Hog. I mean, like, living as long as he does, you have to get used to, like, brawling, because he's also a soldier, because he had been on the battlefield and stuff. I mean, he's done good stuff, he's done bad stuff, he's just kind of lived an all-around life. And I love that when it comes to Joanna, Dream steps in and uses his sand, because time and time again, Joanna's like, I mean, Hop is like, no matter all this time, hundreds of years later, I know next to nothing about you. So they had to be like more careful about it. And there was also, what was that, Lushing Lu in 1889. What was it? She said, "Give me your cream stick." I was like, man, all the word, like every time I turn around, I'm like, is that like a real like old timey phrase for a penis? Like your cream stick? It's like, I mean, it gets the point across, but I'm like, man, like you always turn around and you find out new phrases and new terminology to represent genitalia. It's wild. But then it's like hearing Luis's backstory. It's like, oh, her father was in the army. Her cousin raped her and abandoned her when she was younger. Like, Jesus, like, damn, like, it's like, that's a backstory I kind of didn't want to hear. Like, the more I heard, I was like, God, I was like, that's depressing as shit. I mean, it's kind of life, different people and different stories and different situations. And I thought it was interesting that from his perspective, from Hobbs' perspective, it was like, right, I think I finally know what your shtick is, what your deal is. The fact is that, because he'd asked him, like, previously, what was it, like, 17? It might have been, no, it was like, yeah, 1789, he had asked him about the William Shakespeare of it all. And it's like, oh, like, did you make a deal with him? Maybe. It's like, for his soul, nothing so crude. But he was like, right, you're not here just to experience, like, ask me about my life and if I really want to head towards death, because he's like, I'm never going to want that. But what it is for you is you're lonely. He was like, and Dream took offense to that. It's like, you think me, a being of my status, I'm Dream, Lord of the Dreams, the Kingdom of Dreams, and you think I would ever be lonely? Like something as trivial as human emotion, something like, no, shut up. And, because, I mean, he kept himself so distant from his siblings as well, so. And sadly for, Hob, that was the last time he saw Dream was in 1889, and when they were going to meet up again, obviously Dream was captured, so they couldn't meet up, and he found out the bar that they'd come to all the time was going to get shut down unless someone bought it. But it's like, right, well, we know Hob has a lot of money, plus he's also been in a position where he even said, like, maybe in the 1589, he was like, yeah, I went up north and I came back pretending to be my own son. He's like, I've done that twice now. It's like, yeah, you kind of would have to kind of skirt around that about, so people don't notice you are the same person not aging, because that's how you get into the 1689 situation of being branded a witch. But obviously present day, Dream walks into the bar and sees him, and he's like, oh, you're late. He's like, yeah, sorry, it's not good. It's not a good sign to keep a friend waiting. And hearing that, Hobbs smiled. It's like, because Dream now realizes he probably was lonely, and now recognizes, like, right, you are legitimately a friend. I do. Both of them look forward to these like meetings every 100 years. It's kind of something, and maybe going forward, it may be more often. And now Dream will tell him like who he is, and it's like, right, what you've been up to for the now 100 and what 30 plus years. Well, let me tell you what I've been up to the past, century. What happened to me when we were supposed to meet up again. So I think that'd be kind of interesting, him finally explaining who he is and everything. So I think that's kind of a nice thing. And then we got that ending where I'm like, so at first I was almost like, is the giant thing supposed to be the real Desire and you're just kind of like a human-sized manifestation? Or it's like, no, which almost seems super conceited that you're like, your main place, your gallery is inside a giant heart, inside a giant. I didn't realize that's what it was, because that body is in the trailer, and I was like, oh, that's just like a giant. It's like, oh, but it's like a giant version of Desire. And it turns out Desire's talking to one of their other siblings, because it turns out they're responsible for Dream getting locked away. And it seems like, because obviously Roderick was aiming for Death, and he explained that to his sister, but Death was like, yeah, I kind of already knew. I guess she found out after the fact. Maybe, I don't know, like she seemed like she already knew, or she probably figured like, right, if maybe Roderick wasn't the first to ever attempt that. But the fact is, you happen to get Dream amongst anyone. You didn't get Death, but you also didn't get any of the other siblings. It just happened to be Dream, and it's like, it seems like that was 100% planned. But why was Desire trying to get rid of you? Is Desire, like I said, I'm assuming Desire and Destiny are Desire and Despair are the twins, but maybe they're not. Because it might not even be Desire and someone else that are the twins. It could be another one of the siblings. It could be like Destiny and Despair, for example. But I would assume like Desire and Despair, because it feels like those are almost some opposites to each other. So, but what was it? I mean, what is Desire getting out of locking away their brother? Like, why? What's the beef? What's the issue there? I mean, as we've learned anything from just these universes based on like just the Lucifer show, oh man, is there family drama. Drama. People have a lot of like stuff they keep buried deep inside without ever really letting anyone know like what's what, so it's definitely going to be interesting to see where the next episode takes us with this, learning what Desire's really up to and why, orchestrating all this for what purpose. Like I said, I think it was a nice juxtaposition, the way this episode was designed in that regard, but I'm really interested to see where episode 7 ends up taking us going forward with all of this. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.